Welcome to Branding and the Beast, a podcast about storytelling through words and pictures. This is our flagship episode. This is our first podcast, so we are just kind of going for it. And thank you so much for coming on this journey with us.
So, our first episode is on personality in your branding and storytelling. Couldn't be a better time to talk about this.
Now they're still massive corporations, but we know their founders as though we know them as people, and
Right,
we know the people behind it, and we know those stories of those backgrounds, and they do, even if it's as you said, even if it's an identical product, it gives some sort of added dimension to the customer process and to the buying
right.
process.
What you just said reminds me of that scene in Mary Poppins where they go into the bank and they're so mean to them. They're in that big echoey hallway with the chambers and the pillars, and it's like, no, that does not fly anymore. Like, you need to treat your customers as you would want to be treated. Charmin, the toilet paper company, on February 22nd. I can't even say this without laughing. February 22nd, 2022, they deemed Poop Day, number 2 day. Okay. They rented a barge in New York Harbor and they got an inflatable poop emoji and they drove. Is that what you do? Do you drive a boat? You drove the boat? Drove
I
the
think I,
barge?
I think you drive. I mean, they don't just drive themselves, or do
They
they?
do.
I don't know.
Is there another like sailing term to describe what you're doing
I
with a
can't
boat?
even swim. I'm the wrong guy to ask.
So they moved this boat through the New York Harbor. There's literally a photo I'll show you guys here with the Statue of Liberty behind it and this barge with this gigantic inflatable poop emoji with a giant banner that says 2222022. And I mean, what's Charmin? They're probably what, a Fortune 1000. I mean, they're a big CPG company. If they can do this, you certainly can get some personality in your branding and in your marketing.
So it's yes, we're all Canadian, but Vancouver is very different than Toronto, than Montreal, than what have you. And so, what is it that really ties us all together? And Molson Beer, about 20 years ago or so, I think around 2000, leaned into this Joe Canada character. And it was an actor who I actually was lucky enough to meet a few years later. And they had him do this sort of, rant. And anyone in Canada will know exactly what I'm talking about. About, I'm not this Canadian stereotype or that Canadian stereotype. Uh, I don't live in an igloo. I'm actually going to pull up the lyrics of the rant. I don't live in an igloo or read blubber or own a dog sled, although some people in Canada do. I don't know Jimmy, Sally, or Susie from Canada, although I'm certain they're really nice. That beaver's a truly proud and noble animal. Really kind of leaning in super hard to the Canadian stereotypes that are true, that aren't, and ends with him basically working into a fervorous yell. My name is Joe and I am Canadian. And everybody knew this ad. So this was, instead of just oh, it's Canadian beer, yada yada yada. Look, Molson's not the greatest beer out there, but they really went for it, and it stuck. It's still known 20 years later.
We didn't feel like we changed our brand because for us, our brand is way more than a name or a logo. That is
Sure.
essential part of who we are. It's our purpose. It's how we treat our members. And those things stayed the same for us. But what we did do is change our name and colors to better reflect what we do for our members group. So I, there's a reason we're stodgy, though. People want to know that they can depend on us. Um,
Hmm.
but I think we're entering into a new time. We have fintechs that people are more attracted to, or that they feel better fit from a community impact, or they better understand. And that's one huge cost of changing from Denver Community Credit Union to Zing Credit Union was we lost the word Denver. And
Mm,
that was a very, very hard decision
mm,
because, from the perspective of marketing, Denver is very helpful. From the perspective of people who identify with loving Denver as a place to live, that is difficult. But we looked at the research, we listened to people, and they said if we don't live in the city and county of Denver, which is a very specific place, if we live in the suburbs of Denver, then we don't think we can belong. So we had to take a risk. We had to understand a cost of losing Denver because our purpose, because we were firm in our purpose, we understood that to fulfill our purpose, we needed to put belonging over Denver. And
Yeah.
so that's why I tell people if they're scared about injecting personality, you first need to start with why are we here as an organization? What do we lose? What are we actually scared of? And what do we gain? And make this is common business decision making, right? Like decide
Yeah.
weigh those pros and cons and make your choice. And then of course mitigate your risk as much as you can. Well, and this gets back to something I said earlier. To me, authenticity is key. You can't think of, I'm going to put a new name on this and everything's going to change. And I think sometimes that's how credit unions think. They think, we're going to put this new name on our credit union and everyone's going to come running in the
Mm-hmm.
doors. And this lack of understanding of how people really operate
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes get in the way of what your goals are. And sometimes an organization will put its brand above its purpose, right? They'll say, we really need to take a stand on this political issue. We really need to take a stand um, to talk about this specific audience. But there are times when that's very appropriate and needs to be done. But there are times when that's getting in the way of how you serve the people you're meant to serve, whether they're consumers or members. So the biggest question a brand needs to ask before they say we need to inject our personality or we need to be authentic is, does this serve our purpose? Does making this choice, taking this stand, having this name help us get to where we want to go as an organization? That and the research listening, and then you pull it all together and synthesize that so that you know what your risks are, so that you know what's important to people. We have a member advisory committee that we meet with quarterly, and we sit to them, we ask them, if we go through a change like this, what's the one thing that can never change?